In this video, Wiley Blevins conducts a lesson on close reading of a short text. Close reading means reading and rereading a text for deeper meaning. In this video, students have already read the text once. As the class rereads the text together, notice that Mr. Blevins uses an instructional routine in which he models close reading habits and asks guiding questions that lead students back to the text. Students are encouraged to take notes as a tool to conduct their close reading.
One of my favorite types of stories to read are stories about real people. We have a really interesting one today about a girl named Kiko who moves to the city. And the story is really about how Kiko adjusts to living in a new community. We've been talking a lot about communities this week, and remember our essential question is, let's read it together. Ready? Read.
How do people from different cultures contribute to a community?
Exactly. And this story is going to help us answer that essential question. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to read Room to Grow to yourself, and we're going to whisper read it, which means you're going to read it very softly, and I'm going to circulate and listen in. I can help you with words, for example, that you have difficulty sounding out. So while you're reading this, I want you to fill out your note-taking form. Does everyone have their note-taking forms in front of them? Let's take a look at that and just review what we're going to do. In this column of the note-taking form, you're going to write down the big ideas from the story, the things that you want to remember. You're also going to jot down places where you're puzzled by something or you encounter a confusion, okay? So don't forget to write the page number and the paragraph number where that confusion is so that when we revisit the story, we can quickly find it. In this column here, you're going to write keywords such as words related to culture and community, 2 keywords in our essential question. And you can also draw a little picture if that will help you remember an important part of the story. Are there any questions about what I want you to do? Whisper read Room to Grow. Fill in your note-taking form. When you're finished, we're going to start our conversation. Okay? You can begin. What is that word? Admires. I noticed as I was circulating and looking at your notes that there were some places in the story that a lot of you had some confusion. And it's really helpful after we finish the story to go back and do a second close reading where we really dig in and look at those places that were a little more difficult for us. So that's what we're going to do next, okay? So I'd like you to turn to the first page, and that first section called Spring in the City. Put your finger on there so I know everyone's in the right place. Yeah, right here. Spring in the City. Everyone has their finger there? Now, one of the most important things to understand this story is how Kiko's new home is different from her old home, her old community, because that sort of sets up all the challenges that she faces. So I want you to listen and follow along as I read these first 2 paragraphs, and I want you to look for text evidence that tells us how these 2 places are different, okay? So follow along. My name is Kiko Sato. Last spring, my family and I moved from the country to the big city. Our new home in Portland had no yard. There wasn't even a tiny plot of land. So Mama made an indoor garden. First, she and Papa planted seeds in pots. Then they hung them from hooks. Next, they crammed plants onto shelves. Green vines tumbled over desks. Soon our house had plants everywhere. So when I think about how Kiko's home is different now than it was, I can find some specific text evidence to answer that, can't I? Yeah, so if we look in that first paragraph, what does it say at the end of that first paragraph? Trey?
Big city.
Right, and if we look at that last sentence of that first paragraph, it says, I moved from the country to the big city. Now, there's a big difference between living in the country and living in the city, correct? Now, there are some other clues about how this new place is different. So if we look in the second paragraph, there's some text evidence there that tells us about the difference between the old community and the new. Who can find that text evidence for us? Soleil.
There was no yard.
Where do you find that?
The second paragraph, the first sentence.
And what does it say?
It says our new home in Portland had no yard.
Exactly. So that makes me think that in her old home in the country, she had what? A yard. So this city home seems like it's much smaller, and that makes sense as we keep reading and finding out about the things that they're doing. Okay, let's continue. One of the other things a lot of you guys talked about, which is really important to understand the story, is how she felt about moving to this new community. And some of you said that she was scared. So let's look at that third paragraph that starts with "at first." Put your finger on that. We're going to read that together out loud. And I want you to think about the evidence in that paragraph that tells us how she felt in her new community and what she did about that. Okay, ready? Read.
At first, I was scared to start school. I was afraid no one would be my...
So we know a little bit about how she feels. She's a little, what? She's a little scared, and it says that right in the first sentence. At first, I was scared to start school. Okay, so now we know that Kiko is in a new community, but we haven't answered our essential question about how people from different cultures contribute to a community. So what I want you to do with your partners is to go back into the story, do a close reading, looking for that text evidence, and find places in which we see how her family helped the new community in which they lived. Any questions about that? I know some of you already had some of those ideas on your notes. The things that her family taught the people in the new community. Okay? So you can start having your conversations with your partners. Make sure when you find the text evidence that you write down or you mark the page number and the paragraph number so that we can look at that evidence.
Papa will get long open boxes.
Exactly, this paragraph. Now, what was so special about this garden? Why didn't the people in the community know how to do that already?
Because it was a traditional Japanese garden.
Perfect. Okay. I think you guys all found some really great evidence, so let's share that. I would like Soleil to start. Tell us where you found your evidence and what it was, that this big contribution they made and why they made it. Okay, let's all go there. Page 58, the second paragraph. Raise your hand if you found that same evidence. Excellent. Okay, Soleil, share that with us. What is so important about this paragraph?
They helped plant a vegetable garden for their community.
And why is this such a big deal?
Because it was a traditional Japanese garden.
Right, and this isn't a community in Japan. This is here in the United States. So they brought those traditional ideas here to the United States and helped make their community a better place because they brought this new knowledge. Do you all agree? Great.